There is a word that appears in your Bible nearly 250 times, and almost every time you have read it, you have read a translation that erased most of what it meant. You have seen it as mercy. You have seen it as kindness. You have seen it as steadfast love, or loving kindness, or simply love. Translators have circled this word for centuries, reaching for it with one English term after another, and every single time, the word has slipped through their fingers. Not because they were careless, but because the word is too large for the container we keep trying to pour it into. The Hebrew is Hesed, and the reason no English word can hold it is that Hesed refuses to separate things that we have spent our entire lives keeping apart. Consider what we do with love in our own language. We have made it soft. We have made it a feeling, something that arrives unbidden and departs the same way. A weather system of the heart over which we have no control. We fall into it, as though it were a hole in the ground. And we have made loyalty its opposite. Loyalty is the cold thing, the dutiful thing, the obligation we honor through gritted teeth, long after the feeling has gone. In our minds, there is warm love on one side, and there is hard commitment on the other, and we assume that the two are in tension. We assume that the more you are bound by duty, the less your love is freely given. We assume that the warmest love is the one with no obligation attached to it at all. Chesed does not know this division. Chesed is the word for a love that has obligated itself. It is affection that has made a promise. It is tenderness with a spine of iron running through it. When the ancient Hebrew mind reached for Chesed, it reached for something that was simultaneously the most emotional and the most binding force a person could enter, into a devotion you feel in your chest and a debt you cannot walk away from, fused into one indivisible thing. To translate it as love loses the loyalty. To translate it as faithfulness loses the warmth. And so we are left with these awkward compound words. Loving kindness, steadfast love. Translators stapling two English words together in a desperate attempt to rebuild a wholeness that their language had already shattered. To understand the weight of this word, we have to enter the world that produced it. The world of the ancient Near East was a world held together by covenant. Before there were nations in the way we understand them, before there were contracts and courts and the machinery of law that we trust today, there was the bond between persons. A man would enter into a covenant with another man, a king with his people, a household with a stranger who had been taken in, and the substance of that covenant, the thing that made it more than words spoken into the air, was Chesed. Chesed was the active faithfulness one party showed to the other within the bond. It was not the promise itself. It was the keeping of the promise, lived out, day after day, especially at the moment when keeping it cost something. And here is the detail that the modern mind keeps missing, the hinge on which the entire meaning turns. Chesed was most fully itself precisely when it did not have to act. The deepest Chesed was the loyalty shown when the bond no longer required it, when the other party could no longer enforce it, could no longer repay it, could offer nothing in return. A Chesed shown to someone who could reward you was simply good business. But a Chesed shown to the one who was helpless, the one who had nothing, the one who would never be able to give anything back, that was Chesed in its purest and most blinding form. It was loyalty that had broken free of all self-interest, and yet remained, somehow, more binding than ever. This is the strange gravity of the word. It grows stronger the less it is owed. Now, we can begin to climb. Because Chesed in the scriptures does not stay still. It moves across the entire scale of reality, from the cosmic to the unbearably intimate, and the same word means the same thing at every altitude. Let us begin where the Hebrews themselves love to begin, at the very top, with the love that holds the universe in place. There is a single psalm in the Hebrew scriptures, Psalm 136, that exists for one purpose: to teach the people the size of God's Chesed. It has 26 verses, and every single verse ends with the same line: Ki lolam chazdo, for his Chesed endures forever. The worshiper would recite the first half of each line: God made the heavens. God spread out the earth upon the waters. God made the great lights, the sun to rule the day, the moon and stars to rule the night. And after each act of creation, the whole congregation would answer back, for his Hesed endures forever. Over and over, 26 times, the foundations of the cosmos are laid down, and after each one the people declare that the reason behind it, the force underneath it, is this covenant loyalty that does not end. Sit for a moment with what they were saying. They were not saying that God created the world and then, separately, decided to be loyal to it. They were saying that the loyalty came first. They were saying that Chesed is not God's response to creation, it is the reason for creation. The sun rises tomorrow not because of physics alone, but because the one who hung it there has bound himself to keep it rising. The same word used for a man keeping faith with his neighbor is here stretched across the whole arc of the sky. The covenant loyalty that lifts a beggar from the road is the same covenant loyalty that holds the stars in their courses. There is no difference in kind, only in scale. But a cosmic loyalty, however magnificent, can feel distant. So let us descend. Let us come down from the stars to the slopes of a single mountain where this word is spoken aloud as a self-description by God himself, the only time in the entire Hebrew Bible that God stands beside a single human being and recites his own name and character in full. The man is Moses. He has just witnessed his people break the covenant in the most devastating way imaginable, casting a golden calf and worshiping it at the very foot of the mountain where the covenant was being made. By every measure of justice, the bond is shattered. The people have offered God nothing but betrayal, and Moses, desperate, asks to see God's glory, asks to see who this God truly is, beneath the thunder and the fire. And God answers. He places Moses in the cleft of a rock and passes before him. And as he passes, he proclaims his own name, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in Chesed and faithfulness, keeping Chesed for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin. Notice the moment that this is spoken. It is spoken over a people who have just proven they deserve none of it. The covenant has been broken from below, and God responds not by withdrawing his loyalty, but by declaring it twice in a single breath, abounding in Chesed, keeping Chesed for thousands. This is the strange gravity again, now at the divine scale. The Hesed is most fully revealed at the precise moment it is least deserved. Where human justice would dissolve the bond, God's Hesed reaches across the broken contract and holds it together from his side alone. The people have nothing left to offer, and that, in the logic of this word, is exactly when Chesed shines at its brightest. We have seen Chesed hold the cosmos. We have seen Chesed spoken by God over a guilty people. Now let us descend one level further, to the level of a single human relationship, where the word is lived out by two ordinary people in a story so small and so quiet that we almost overlook it. For Hesed is not only something God does, it is something he calls his people to imitate. And the clearest portrait of human Hesed in all the scriptures is found in the story of a foreign widow named Ruth. The bare facts of her situation contain no obligation whatsoever. Ruth is a Moabite, a foreigner, married into an Israelite family living in her land. Then the men of the family die, the husband and both sons. 3 widows are left, the old mother-in-law Naomi and her 2 foreign daughters-in-law. And Naomi, with nothing left to offer, releases them. She tells them to return to their own mother's homes, to find new husbands, to begin again. There is no contract binding Ruth to this bitter old woman. The marriage that connected them is dissolved by death. By every law and every custom, Ruth is free. She owes Naomi nothing. There is no one to enforce a claim upon her, and nothing to gain by staying. And it is precisely there, at the place of zero obligation, that Hesed appears in its purest human form. Ruth refuses to leave. She clings to Naomi and speaks the words that would echo for 3,000 years. Where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. This is a woman binding herself, by her own free choice, to a future of poverty and foreignness and probable barrenness, for the sake of an old woman who can give her nothing in return. She is choosing the bond at the exact moment the bond has released her. This is the strange gravity made flesh. And later in the story, when Boaz blesses her, he names it directly. He tells her that her latest Chesed is greater than her first, that her loyalty has only deepened the longer it has gone unrewarded. Do you see what has happened across these three scenes? The same word, one word, has held the rising of the sun, the forgiveness of a treacherous nation, and the loyalty of a widow on an empty road. And it meant the same thing in all three. A love that has bound itself, a faithfulness that grows stronger as it grows less deserved. From the cosmic to the national to the intimate, the pattern never changes. It only comes closer. And the closer it comes, the more it asks of us, because by the time we reach Ruth, we are no longer watching God hold up the stars. We are watching a human being do something we could be asked to do ourselves. But there is one more descent to make. And this is the descent that turns the whole study from something beautiful into something inescapable. Because so far, Chesed has been a particular thing. It has been shown by a particular God, to a particular nation, embodied by particular people. Moses, Ruth, Boaz, the line of David through whom this Moabite widow would become the great-grandmother of a king. Chesed has belonged to the story of one covenant people, and a person watching from outside that story could admire it the way you admire a stained glass window in someone else's cathedral, moved by it, but standing on the pavement, knowing it was not built for you. Here is where everything turns. The prophets of Israel began to speak of a Hesed that would no longer be contained within the borders of one people. The prophet Hosea was commanded to live out a parable with his own marriage, to take back a wife who had abandoned him, to show that God's Chesed would pursue the unfaithful and the foreign and the lost. And then a single sentence, spoken through that same prophet, cracked the whole thing open. For I desire Chesed and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. God was saying that the entire apparatus of religion, the sacrifices, the offerings, the rituals of the temple, all of it, was a container for Chesed. And where the Chesed was absent, the container was worthless. The thing he wanted was never the religion. The thing he wanted was the loyal love itself. And that thing could be carried by anyone, anywhere, regardless of their bloodline or their birthplace. And so the word that had been spoken over one nation became a word spoken over all. The Greek-speaking world that received the Hebrew scriptures had no single word for Chesed either. And so they too reached for the nearest thing, and the word they most often chose was eleos, mercy, and at times the great word agape, the self-giving love that does not depend on the worth of the one being loved. When the early communities tried to describe the love that had been shown to them, a love that came while they were still enemies, still owing nothing, still unable to repay, they were describing Chesed with new letters. The strange gravity had not changed. The deepest loyalty, shown to the one who least deserved it and could never pay it back, had simply opened its doors to the whole human race. This is the moment the study stops being academic. Because if Chesed is real, if there exists a love that binds itself, that grows stronger as it grows less deserved, that reaches across every broken contract and holds on from its own side, then the question is no longer, what did this ancient word mean? The question becomes, have I ever been on the receiving end of it? Have I ever been the one on the empty road, the one with nothing left to offer, the one who broke the covenant from below and found that the loyalty did not leave? We live in a world that has made love cheap, precisely by making it free of obligation. We are told that the highest love asks nothing, binds nothing, holds nothing, that to truly love someone is to leave them entirely unencumbered, and to expect the same in return. And so we have surrounded ourselves with relationships that evaporate the moment they cost something. We have friendships that last exactly as long as they are convenient. We have loyalties that survive only until a better offer arrives. We have learned to leave the moment the bond stops serving us, and we have given this leaving a noble name. We call it freedom, and then we wonder why we feel so utterly alone. Chesed is the cure for that loneliness, and it is a costly cure because it cannot be received without also being demanded of us. To be loved with Chesed is to be loved by someone who will not leave when you have nothing to give. But to learn the word is also to be summoned by it, to become the kind of person who stays, the kind of friend who shows up after the usefulness has run out, the kind of family that holds the bond even when the bond is no longer being honored from the other side, the kind of love that is most fully itself in the precise moment it would be easiest and most reasonable and most socially acceptable to walk away. This is why no single English word could ever hold it, because Hesed was never asking to be defined. It was asking to be lived. Every translator who reached for it and came up short was running into the same wall that you cannot capture in a word, a thing that was only ever meant to be embodied in a life. Loving kindness is what you write when you are translating a text. Chesed is what you discover when someone refuses to let go of you long after they had every right to. So the next time you open the scriptures and your eye falls on the word mercy or kindness or steadfast love, stop. Let the small English word fall away, and underneath it, hear the ancient word that the translators could never quite carry across: Chesed, a love with a spine, a tenderness that has made a promise, a loyalty that does not weaken when it is unrewarded but grows. And then ask yourself the only question that matters about a word like this: not whether you understand it, but whether you have ever been held by it, and whether you are willing, now, to hold someone else the same way. Because in the end, the loneliness of our age is not that we are unloved, it is that we have forgotten there was ever a love that stays.